Hi, I'm Dan Schmitt. I'm at Kersting's Harley-Davidson in Winamac, Indiana, which is just 4 miles south of North Judson on Indiana Highway 39. They got a great museum. They're a Harley-Davidson dealership. They're also a Yamaha dealership. They've been a sponsor of Team Chicago going all the way back to the 1994, I believe, when I was doing the WERA National Endurance Series. So I've been Jim Kersting initially invited me down here, and I met Jim when we were doing the ice racing in LaPorte, Indiana. So my involvement with Kersting's goes back, we're talking, from 40 years now. I remember Jason and Sandy were just kids hanging around at the motorcycle shop, learning everything. So we're going to find out more information about these new Harley-Davidsons. I'm going to look at them. We're going to videotape the new Harleys. We're also going to talk about the Pan-American Harleys. And then we're going into the museum. I'm going to look at some of the motorcycles there. So I think this could be a pretty nice show. And like I said, I'm Dan Schmitt. My email is teamdan45@gmail.com. My website is teamchicago.tv. Remember, you can always search on YouTube with Dan Schmitt Motorcycle Racing for great motorcycle racing action. It's a sunny day in Indiana, but a little brisk as we take a look at Kersting's Harley-Davidson and Yamaha motorcycle shop. I met Jim Kersting back in 1993. We were ice racing in LaPorte, Indiana. He invited me to see his museum. And I should point out that Kersting's Cycle Center was a major sponsor of Team Chicago when we were racing the WERA National Endurance Series. So it's important that I learn more about these road glides, the street glides, and the Pan-American Harley-Davidsons. So let's talk to Jim's son, Jason. He's going to tell us all about these bikes. I was invited here to, you sent me an email.
Yes.
Telling about the new Harleys that you're featuring. And this is going to be a big event at Kersting's. And I always love coming to Kersting's for big events. You had your 50th anniversary. I came and I shot a couple of TV shows. We had a great hundreds of people. I mean, maybe 1,000 people showed up.
Yeah.
So tell me about what are we featuring now on these new bikes? So you said there's 2 new models that we're featuring. So give me the rundown of what they've really changed.
Well, what today is Harley-Davidson's doing a national open house. So it's across the nation. Every dealer is putting up, and there's an opportunity to win a new street glide or road glide from Harley-Davidson by scanning barcodes that's spread out around the store here. So Harley is featuring the new street glide and the new road glide. For years, street glide has been one of the best-selling bikes that Harley-Davidson's made. And they decided to revamp it and make some changes. So this year they come out based off of last year's CVO, which is Custom Vehicle Operations Model. It's the fanciest, highest technology that Harley-Davidson offers. Last year's CVO is this year's Street Glide. So we've had a Street Glide, we've had a Street Glide Special, and we've had a Street Glide CVO for the last several years. They also added a Street Glide ST. Same thing with the Road Glide. Had a Road Glide Special, Road Glide ST. And it was a nightmare for a dealer to try to make sure he had everything in inventory. This year Harley-Davidson builds a Street Glide or a Road Glide. No other models, and then it's up to the customer to decide how they want to dress them up.
So what defines the glide? Because let's go a little history on the word glide.
Okay.
Your dad, we had a long discussion back, because I'm not the Harley guy, so
Right.
So we go all the way back to when they came out with the dual glide.
Yes.
And the dual glide is when they added shocks on the back of the bike. So prior to the dual glide, all of the Harley-Davidsons were rigid tail, and the suspension was in the seat.
Correct.
The rear side.
Correct.
So then, after they had the dual glide, which added shocks to the back, but it was still using the panhead motor, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then the next thing was it the electric? No,
well, the
Hydroglide. Hydroglide. No, Hydroglide was before the dual glide. Hydroglide is when they had hydraulic forks in the front instead of the Springer fork.
Correct.
Okay. Then you get into the dual glide. That's when they added shocks on the back. So we're still talking here in the 1950s.
Right.
And then the Electroglide came out, and that was in 1965. Okay, and that was an electric start.
Correct.
Added on to still the panhead motor,
right?
If I'm not correct. Okay. So the Glide name has been with Harley all the way back to the mid-30s.
Yes.
Okay. So now what? All right. So tell me about these two new glides. Give me some of the features.
Okay, so we've got two. One's a street glide, one's a road glide. Street glide is what they refer to as a bat wing fairing that is mounted on the handlebars or the front fork. The road glide is what they're calling the shark nose fairing. It's a solid mount to the frame, doesn't turn with the handlebars. That's the two glides that they have. Like you said, the glide name is just carried all the way through. So we still have a street glide, we still have an electric glide, ultra limited, we have the road glide, so the glide name is going to stay. And what's really neat this year in one of the Icon collections, and hopefully you'll get a picture of it today, they have the Hydroglide Revival, and that came out in 2024. These are limited production, very cool. You'll see one out front there today.
Okay, so engines, any difference in the engines? What are they? Are at bigger size?
Yes, so the Street Glide and the Road Glide now comes with the 117 cubic inch engine. The CVO has a 121 cubic inch, which is a variable valve timing. So if we want to talk about some technology, this is incredible stuff. They've actually got a cam that can be on the extreme ground side that will produce horsepower and torque. And in the past, before variable valve timing, you could grind a cam in a way that you would make more horsepower, or you could grind the cam in the way that it'd make more torque. Well, now with the variable valve timing, we can cause this excessively ground cam to produce both torque and horsepower with the smooth idle for around town riding. So big time performance with the smooth rideability.
Okay, so if you had an opportunity to ride these bikes.
Yes, I have, and they are so smooth. I cannot believe. Harley-Davidson's always been known for a shake and a vibration.
Right.
Well, they're coming into the next century, and now our bikes are smooth and they're fast and they're powerful. Something that Harley's not been known for.
Right.
But there's not another V-twin engine out there that's going to perform as well as some of these new ones are today.
Right. So that's one thing we're going to do later this year, and I'm going to come back.
Yeah.
Because we're going to, when you got a demo of one of these new glides, and I want to take one of the old bikes out, maybe something out of a museum.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun.
I think if we should go ride, do a 25, I'll get you a helmet cam, I'll have a helmet cam.
Yeah, that'd be
fun. And we'll go ride, and we'll switch off the bikes, because I'd like to ride that tank shifter. I know I rode that once before.
Sure.
But then we could really go back to the past and do a whole show on what's taken place for over the last 70 years now with Harley-Davidson. Because the one thing you guys do have at this shop is you do have this whole collection of Harley-Davidsons that...
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the Pan-American, because I already shot some of that footage, and I know the Pan-American came out for the intention of getting more of a European market, to open up Harley-Davidson to the European market. It's sort of the Trans-Alp type bike with the longer suspension. I notice on the floor here you have one that's got a knobby tires on it.
Yeah.
And then you got the dual sport tires. And tell me about that engine. What do you know about these?
Well, that's the new Revolution engine that Harley's done. It's an overhead cam engine, so no more push rods on this one.
Right, right.
Liquid cooled, around 150 horsepower. It's a 1250cc engine. Harley-Davidson was going after the adventure touring market, is what they call it here in the United States.
Right.
So the BMW and KTM has been kind of the leaders in the adventure touring market.
Right, right.
Harley-Davidson came out with a Pan-America that was every bit as nice as the BMW and the KTM right off the bat.
Right.
So BMW, KTM, they've had several years to refine their bike, make it a great adventure touring bike. Harley-Davidson came out, and within a year of production, they are playing in the game that BMW has started.
So what kind of interest do you get at this shop in the middle of nowhere? Like you say, the little shop in the middle of nowhere that's got everything great.
Yeah, well, it's a little shop in the middle of nowhere where wonderful folks come from everywhere.
Right.
So the Pan-America has not taken off that great here because most of the people around here that ride, they ride bigger bikes. You know, we've got a lot of bugs out here in the country. We like the full fairing protection. The Pan-America has nice windshield stuff. It does sit a little tall, so it limits the amount of riders. What Harley has done for the tall seat height is they have adjustable ride height. So this thing will actually lower itself an inch when you pull up to a stop sign, and as soon as you take off, it returns the ride height back up there.
Oh, really?
That way,
because you want more suspension, especially if you're going to be off-road, or not so much off-road, but back roads.
Yeah,
Right,
completely. Back roads. You've seen the potholes on the gravel roads.
Right.
I mean, this thing will just soak them up. It's no problem. I actually just got back from Arizona a couple weeks ago and had one of the Pan-Americas out there with me, and it was some of the most phenomenal riding I've ever been on.
So you were doing some off-road stuff,
yeah.
sort of? Okay,
Yep.
right.
There's an old stagecoach trail that runs in this area where I was at, just northwest of Phoenix, and I rode this stagecoach road on the Pan-America. It's not a road that I can imagine going down in a stagecoach. There's no way a car or vehicle could go down this road, but I was able to do it on the Pan-America with no problems.
Right. Okay, so any other events that we got planned coming up this year at Kersting's that I should be aware of?
Well, we do rider training here.
Okay.
We've got basically starting April 6th, we start training riders. We do 12 a weekend, and we'll have basically rider training every weekend from now until the end of the season, sometime in October. We do have a big event. My daughter and son-in-law put on a pretty big car show. Poland Designs, he's a painter. He does a pretty big car show and motorcycle show. That's going to be here in September. I'm not sure of the date right now.
Okay, so it's sort of be like what we did with the party, the 50th party. You're going to have cars and bikes.
Yes.
Okay.
DJ, and there'll be a lot of people here.
So I should bring my Triumph down and
yes,
and have a chance to hang out.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
It'd be a good time to show that one off.
Right. Well, like I said, I am a Triumph guy, and I still have my race bike, and I've been racing it. I bought this bike, so now I've had this bike 52 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I bought it from George Wills, and it still runs great, and
Yeah.
I'm still going to run a couple of half miles.
Well, you know, we do still have a couple of Triumphs out in the museum, too.
Yes,
So,
yes. Well, I am going to go to the museum. That's
Good.
another part of this show. And I think this time I'm going to go from the smallest bike you got there to the largest bike.
Okay.
Motor size.
yeah.
And I think I'll find 10 bikes that will fit my step-by-step.
So the big one's the Lincoln Zephyr.
Yes,
Has the V-12
which I
engine.
probably will show some footage of me riding that.
Okay.
All right. So if your website here is what now?
It's www.kerstingscycle.com. So it's KERSTINGSCYCLE.com.
Great. All right. Thank you, Jason. It's always important for me to know what's going on with Harley-Davidson. And now we're in the museum, and we're going to look at some of the bikes in the museum. We're starting with the smaller bikes and working our way up to the two largest bikes here. First, we're looking at two 1966 Harley-Davidson M50s. These are 50cc two-stroke motorcycles made in Italy by Aramaki, but at this time Harley-Davidson bought half of that company. These were considered the boy racers. And now we're looking at Frank Darst's Hummer, also known as the 165, the two-stroke motorcycle. Harley-Davidson knew they needed a small engine. This is a reparation engine copied from the DKW 125. I met Frank Darst ice racing. He was racing all the way through his 80s on the ice. I had a great opportunity to interview him, and it's great to see his bike in the museum. And now we're looking at a Harley-Davidson scooter. That's right. This is a Harley-Davidson Topper. It's got the 164cc two-stroke engine with reed valves. This is a 1965. Very well-preserved scooter. Right next to it, we're seeing a Cushman scooter, almost the same exact color. It's a Cushman pacemaker, 21 cubic inch engine, which works out to 344 cc's, four-stroke engine in these Cushmans. The engines were made by Husky, and this one had an automatic clutch, so there was no shifting. Right next to it, we get to see a Super Eagle. The Super Eagle had a 354cc four-stroke engine, two-speed transmission, hand shift, and you can see it looks like a small motorcycle, but it's got the small scooter wheels, the cast iron engine, and they ended production of Cushmans in 1966. And next we spot a Mustang Thoroughbred. This is the small motorcycles, they considered it. It had a four-speed transmission, a 320cc engine, flathead engine. It was considered a small motorcycle. 12-inch wheels, built in Glendale, California. And now we're looking at a Whizzard Sportsman. A Whizzard Sportsman was built in Pontiac, Michigan. It had 20-inch wheels. It was built by Whizzard. It was based off a design from one of their mechanics, Donald White, who built a small Whizzard for his son. It sold for $239. It came with a two-speed. And now we're looking at a Whizzard in a Schmitt bicycle frame. Now the Whizzard engine kit sold for $97. The company originated in Los Angeles but moved to Pontiac, Michigan. These engines were made to work with a great number of different bicycle frames. The gas tank held 5 quarts of gasoline, and the engine was 138 cc's. And now we're looking at a DKW 50. This is a small motorcycle, but it's got the full body, so it looks like a scooter. But the builders wanted larger tires. It came with 17-inch wheels, which were more stable than the small scooter wheels. You can see it's got a very artistic design. It's a 50cc two-stroke engine. Next up is a Moto Guzzi Galletto 1954, also with a full body. Got a 150cc four-stroke engine with a 3-speed. Got a single-sided swing arm in the back. And you can see the spare tire could be used either in the front or the back. 17-inch wheels. And now we're looking at the first Harley Sprint. Harley Sprints were made by Harley-Davidson, Aramaki. They, like stated before, they bought half of the company. We got 250 Sprints, and after 1970, they became 350 Sprints. You can see that design change in the head. And I should point out that these engines won 4 world championships, 3 250 world championships road racing, 1 350 world championship, and it was with Walter Villa, an Italian that was racing for Harley-Davidson and Aramaki in Europe. Short stroke designs and long stroke designs. And now we see a BSA B25 Starfire with a 4-speed trans, a vertical single cylinder. And these BSA 250s battled with the Harley Sprints on the short tracks in the late 1960s through the early 1970s. And now we're looking at another Harley-Davidson, but this one was made when AMF was owner of Harley-Davidson. Was built by Aramaki, the 250 with a 2-stroke engine. Yes, this engine does resemble the Yamaha DT250 engine, but this was not a big seller for Harley-Davidson. Next we spot a Moto Guzzi Falcone. This is a 1946 500cc with a 4-speed. A very lovely motorcycle. The springs for the rear suspension are located under the engine, and they use friction discs for the suspension. It's got an external flywheel turning opposite of the engine to smooth out the engine. And this motorcycle was known as either the bacon slicer or the salami slicer. I got to ride this bike, and it is a great motorcycle. And now we're going to look at one of the big bikes in this museum, the V8 Ford engine. This is when Ford built a solid cast V8, first company to do so. There's a great video on YouTube if you go to the Ford V8 engine. It's an hour video. This motorcycle uses Harley-Davidson forks, fenders, and it was built by Dale Olson. This engine makes 85 horsepower, and it's a 221 cubic inch engine. And this bike rides great. Right next to it is the granddaddy of them all, also built by Dale Olson, the Lincoln Zephyr V-12 motorcycle. This motorcycle only uses a single speed, a single clutch. I rode it. It works great. This engine also is a one-piece casting of the V12 engine. Got aluminum heads, 267 cubic inches, the 75-degree V engine, making 110 horsepower. A single carburetor. You could see the air cleaner for the carburetor. Lincoln Zephyr V12 motorcycle. I got to ride it. It is great. Well worth your trip to this museum to see this motorcycle. We now get to see Jim Kersting's favorite motorcycle. It's a 1910 Model 6 with an F-head, single cylinder, made 4 horsepower, totally unrestored. It took 114 years for this paint to look this great, as we see this picture of Jim Kersting with his late wife, Nella. And now in the car section of the museum, I get to see Jim's hot rod. This is either a 1929 or 31 Model A Ford. The Model A Ford originally came with a 4-cylinder engine. This hot rod's got a modern 4-cylinder engine with an automatic transmission. Ford sold 4,858,000 of these cars between 1929 and 1931. This is a lovely hot rod. It is great that I get to see and get to talk about Jim Kersting's hot rod Ford. It was a great day to come to this little shop in the middle of nowhere where wonderful folks come from everywhere. And in 2006, Jim Kersting invited me to ride the V-12 Zephyr. You see Jim put a little gas in the gas tank. For more information on Kersting Cycle Center and Museum, just south of North Judson, Indiana, the website is KerstingCycle.com. KerstingCycle.com. To contact me, and I love to hear from my audience, it's teamdan45@gmail.com. Remember, you can always search on YouTube with Dan Schmitt Motorcycle Racing for great motorcycle racing action, Dan Schmitt Politics to learn what makes America great. What a great riding motorcycle in the Indiana countryside. And I highly encourage you to visit the World of Motorcycle Museum. It's 4 miles south of North Judson in Winamac, Indiana, just off of Highway 39. But give them a call first at 574-896-3172. It's a great trip and a great collection of motorcycles. And pick up your Team Chicago history package at Rich's Yamaha. They're in Lockport, Illinois, but give them a call first at 815-838-8130. Their website is richesyamaha.com. Pick up your Team Chicago history package.